Okay, we're gonna have an executive session, there's be a motion for that.
So, second. You want to get that?
Okay, reconvene. A motion? Approval of the minutes, 3.1. I need a motion.
So motion.
Second. Discussion. Marcy, do you take, like, if someone's not present, they have to abstain, right, for minutes? Do you want to have minutes?
If they're not,
If they
no,
weren't present for that meeting?
they don't have to,
They don't.
they don't,
I just
because
don't know
they,
if I had to keep track of that.
to read them, so. So, Jean?
Aye.
Jessica?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
Joe?
Aye.
Nora?
Aye.
John?
Personnel items for action, 4.1. Need a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second. Discussion.
Jean?
Aye.
Jessica?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
Joe?
Aye.
Nora?
Aye.
John?
Finance items for action, 5.1 through 5.4. Need a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion on any of those?
On 5.4, it says equipment disposal. In one place it says filing cabinets, and the other one it says cafeteria equipment.
Sorry, that's a cut and paste, it's all blueprint, filing cabinets,
That's what I thought.
blueprint size, yes.
Well, this is for personal storage, you know, sorry, I was just gonna say personal, I mean, school storage, not like, academic,
No, it's,
engineering classes.
so it's old files that were used to store blueprints from existing capital projects.
Oh, I didn't know, is there a requirement to keep them for a certain number of times of the blueprint themselves?
They're being kept, it's
Yeah,
just
we
filing
get the
cabinets.
blue-
Oh, okay.
It's gonna find a better filing system.
Scan it.
Yeah.
Jean?
Aye.
Jessica?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
Joe?
Aye.
Nora?
Aye.
John?
6.1, special education recommendations recommended that the recommendations of the CPSC, CSE, and 5014 are hereby approved. Need a motion for that? Second?
Aye.
Discussion?
Jean?
Aye.
Jessica?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
Joe?
Aye.
Nora? John?
So the president's report, I'm going to cover that in our discussion items. Any board committee reports?
I just said, the first three committees that we've discussed are up for second review. We're gonna vote on them tonight. We should be getting the next batch. And one was the code of conduct.
We have updated, were you making updates to that this year, Phil? Or?
That was stuff we wanted to talk about for moving forward. So the one you have is what it currently
Okay,
is.
then I'll present that.
So we have another batch coming. First reading will probably be at the next meeting.
Should we have should we put people on the date and time for their committees to report out? I think we might have talked about that before. Should we have, scheduled times when we're going to report student services?
Yeah, I think we talked about how many times a year. We're gonna do like once a quarter, but I don't think we decided on when we'll actually report. Like I'm trying to get something scheduled right now for the curriculum committee. So once that's scheduled, we meet, have an update on that. But I think having a date and schedule would be smart, and then we're
Do you want
prepared.
to try to look at the board meeting dates and then close to the end of the quarter and just put them all on one
Or,
update?
Sure.
okay.
That sound good?
Yeah.
with that.
And somehow the committees, I think, if you could give them a heads up.
Yep.
In terms of being available, so, yeah.
Yeah.
So I didn't, thank administrators for the presentation. I know we requested as a board to move the date to the evening, and I know that it can get long. That was very helpful for us to be able to meet that, so greatly appreciate you switching your own schedule for that. Superintendent's highlights.
Yeah, so, Ryan, I know it's itching to get back over to, that meeting in the stadium, so I'm gonna have him go first, and then we'll have Jill do her presentation, and then I'll just, give an update on strategic plan.
Yeah, thanks. This is really, hopefully fairly quick, and just trying to get some feedback and hopefully see what direction we want to move in with a couple of things that are happening within athletics. Tonight it's coming up to on the mergers, so I won't go through that right now. You received that. But the two topics I guess we're kind of looking at is for further discussion or direction from you guys as a board moving forward. This year is with girls wrestling. So what it means for WeGo, the state has moved girls wrestling to girls only for a section and a state champion. We currently have the section 4 champion, and she has wrestled mixed competition. So meaning she's been wrestling with boys, but then she's also able to go to female events. The female sectional event in state she's been able to do mixed competition and then compete in those for the females. That's not an option anymore. If she were to choose mixed competition, she kind of takes herself out of the girls. So now there is girls only wrestling, and we would like to move forward with allowing her to be in that category. So she has the most success. She's successful no matter what. But that would be very advantageous for her. With that, we would have to look at hiring a position and a coach.
One of the requirements, right, is that from a practice standpoint,
Yeah, so
they used to be able to practice together with the boys team. Now they'll no longer be able to do that. They have to be practicing in a different location, which creates some logistical issues.
Causes a little problem. So yeah, you can't be in so they need their own practice space now. It could happen at the same time, but obviously different space. I'm talking with Mr. Daly about some spaces we have over here and some of the team rooms we use currently, but then what we could potentially use as a female space for her to practice. And there's just some logistical things with that for sure. So I've started talking with him about his staff and what that would look like. We do have some wrestling applications in there to look at that we could maneuver around and have a female wrestling coach to move that forward. So I'd like to do that. Obviously that season starts middle of November, so one of the October board meetings would be great to be able to make that recommendation and move forward to support her to have that as an option.
Just curious, is that what she would prefer?
Yes.
And do you have a number of female wrestlers?
Currently, in our youth program, we have quite a few. For our team, it's one.
So the only reason I ask is I'm trying to envision for practicing, maybe get her someone to wrestle.
So they can do some joint practices, and they can do things like that where they bring in some other people locally in the area. Tioga has girls.
Okay.
Yes.
Waverly.
Tioga. So we would coordinate and collaborate with them on some joint practices for sure. Exactly to your point, who's she going to wrestle together?
Is there an opportunity for merger style like they're talking about with the Fit Black and Nice on?
Potentially. Yeah.
So
It could be an option.
big item for each school, right, with different space approaches. Right.
Absolutely. So, but that is a possibility, yes.
To that point, so just ballpark numbers for what would be JV or modified girls wrestling, what are they looking at? I mean,
For us currently, it's just here right now, we have one
overall,
for our program.
the users,
At the youth level right now, so our WeGo youth wrestlers, we have a few females that are starting to get involved in that. So moving forward, it's a growing sport.
And there may be others that come out.
Yep. Yeah. Well, that's just it.
Sure.
Absolutely. When signups start, we could get 3 or 4 that say, you know what, now it's a girls' sport. We're no longer with the boys. Let's go. I want to give it a try. That's an unknown until we see registration. But One for sure.
I don't know, Ryan, how we compare. I mean, my grandson was a wrestler, and we used to go to a lot of the competitions, and like you said, Tiger Center, Horseheads, Waverly, they had a Vestal, a surprising number of, I think that, not Vestal, but definitely Tioga's.
Tioga, Elmira, Horseheads,
Yeah.
those are probably your biggest teams,
Yeah.
but they are, again, it's a sport that's growing.
Well, it's a growing sport is my point, but at the same time, finding female coaches might be a challenge, where I think that the merged idea might be easier in the beginning. I don't know. It just depends on how many of our kids decide they want to go that route. But I've seen it. I've seen it from year to year where it's grown.
I could certainly bring up the merger. I think, if I'm being honest, and I think she wants to be a River Hawk wrestler, and be for a week ago.
So I just wonder how many female coaches are actually out there.
Oh,
Because the sport,
Female, yeah.
the sport's so it's just starting to grow. I'm not against it in any way. I just wonder how many you might have a tough time finding a female
That's
coach.
why I started the conversation with Mr. Daly a little while ago to start seeing who he has on his staff, what that might look like. Reached out to a couple of people in the community, wrestling community, to kind of start that conversation. And we've had a couple of people say that they might be interested in that. So
But the female only, is that as of this year?
this is the first year.
Because I tell you, at the tournaments I saw, that wasn't the case. I mean, I saw the Tiger Center wrestlers whoop up pretty good on the boy wrestlers.
That happens here as well, yeah.
But they also had male coaches too. So.
Yeah.
Horses did.
Is there a way on Family ID to do the survey, or to put it out there as an option?
We could do to see the numbers. You mean how many would be interested?
Yeah.
We could do an intent to play.
Yeah, okay. I think it's a good idea.
The second one, another going to be a hot topic, and it's our dual participation. It does not seem as if the state is going to make a decision on it, so kind of pushing on local. Next week, we do have our state mandated AD meeting we go to every year, which allows our team to get into playoffs. It's at CV, so I know I spoke with Maine and Wolves athletic director as well. And one of us will probably be bringing this up as a topic of concern because of last year, and it impacts our two teams specifically, as we all know, last year around softball. Looking already ahead and being proactive right now, we have the softball semifinals and the potential flag football regional final on the same day again. So we're going to ask that question of why. It has already come up, and we have been told as ADs at our section meeting that they're not changing dates. We know the dates, these are set. I don't 100% agree with that. We had options last year that just were not utilized. So again, this is a discussion. And seeking feedback. What do we want to do as a district? Obviously, the number one thing is we're always trying to give experiences and opportunities for our kids. We want them to have the best experiences. But laying out the options of what is out there and talking with other people, to be honest, I'm not 100% sure there's a choice that doesn't impact something else. And that's the real challenge in this. The options that I've kind of spelled out, and I know I've discussed, is leaving it as is, and we allow dual participation, and we choose a primary sport. That's an option. The other option is, and some schools have said it's been the bigger schools. Most of the schools out west that have bigger numbers, but they just don't allow it. And they've said we're just not allowing dual participation, so kids choose. And that would impact us in a way where we could see one of our programs take a pretty good hit or lose a program, which I don't want to do. And then the last option would be to, do we say, okay, coaches kind of work together, and if you want to allow it, you can. If you don't, but that kind of I don't love that either, kind of pits coaches against each other, you know, you're kind of fighting for athletes, so.
So the state does not make this decision. Wasn't that the end of last year was, it wouldn't happen anymore, right? Wasn't it
No, they wouldn't change it.
They wouldn't change it.
And what they've come out this year again and said is their date is set, they're not changing anything.
and they didn't say they're not gonna allow New York State to participate, that was.
So that is a question that we've asked and we're waiting to hear. I would love to,
Okay.
but that would, if that ever happened, that changes this discussion.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean? So I'm trying to be proactive and put this out there as a conversation for you guys to think about what do we want to do? If you're absolutely right, if the state comes out and says, listen, we've had some interesting things go on, no do it, we're just not allowing it, perfect. We follow the state, you know. But it's
There's
a
been
tough
conversation,
one.
but I don't know if there's been. any
There's not been a decision. So that's why I'm coming to you guys trying to ask, like, what's your feedback? What's your thoughts? I'd love to hear, you know, how you want to make that work. Again, I'm being honest, I don't think either way, there's no win in it. It's a very tough decision because you're either going to make them choose or you're going to allow them to play both. Again, from our district perspective, I say flag football because that's what this kind of stemmed around when the dual participation came about, but not really, because we allow it in the winter. So we have girls that did basketball and indoor track. So we did allow that too. It really hits home in the spring. It impacts more athletes in the spring, and for us, for our athletes, for the kids, the community, like it's tough when they're making decisions on what to play, and obviously it impacted us last year. And again, there's 2 schools that it looks to possibly impact again this year. The other school district and I stood at a flag football game and said, one of us next weekend is in conflict. So.
Where is it with the, I'm gonna call it that number maybe, about boys participation in girls sports as far as?
So that's the mixed competition that I talked about, I think 2 meetings ago. That's been tabled as far as we know. They came out and said that they were gonna move forward on it, and then I know we got something from Dr. Zayas from the state, and they went to Albany, and I think that got tabled. So still no decision on the boys mixed competition playing for girls sports yet. And that was impacting softball, field hockey, volleyball,
Flag, I said that because
flag football.
anybody who's gonna choose to turn that into a football spring season.
That is true
Yes.
statement. Yes, all of a sudden, girls flag football probably becomes 77 spring football. Yeah.
Here's what I would say to be prepared for as well, based on feedback that I've received and conversations that have happened, or even information that's coming out of Zayas' office, that eventually it's gonna be a local decision. Most likely, if it goes through, it's gonna be dumped on districts to make this decision as to how we're gonna tackle this. So I don't think that's fair. I think that we've communicated that this is not a fair decision from a state standpoint to be jumping in districts. But at this point, they're not listening. So.
And from the superintendent's councils to the New York State Athletics to the National NAIA, the administrators, and sort of like they've all put letters, and we've been advocating for those things. But yeah, it's kind of a standstill at the moment. It's not being heard. So again, this is putting it out there for you guys to have this information. Share the document with you, read through it. I think we're looking for, like I said, some discussion, some feedback. How do we want to handle these things that are going to impact us as a district and potentially our kids? So
Typically, you look for win-wins. This is a lose-lose-lose.
it's unbelievable. I know.
The sad part is there's nothing going on, and there are things going on in the winter, because wide open for a lot of kids. And I think schools our size, if we choose to make them choose one sport, you're going to lose JV softball, you're going to lose JV lacrosse, you're going to lose. But then I believe you make decisions in the best interest of kids. And if 35, 40 girls want to play flag football, So it's gonna be a lose-lose decision, I guess I'd be for the, dual sport ultimately. But there's arguments for both and against both. So
Absolutely.
I'm totally against the coaches choosing. That puts them in a
Yeah,
tough
yeah,
spot,
that's-
you know, they're fighting amongst each other,
No.
that's not.
And our stats have been very good about that, but yes, if you put that out there, yes, you're absolutely right. It kind of gets them against each other, which is not probably the best.
I think the frustrating piece is that, you know, we want as many opportunities for kids as we can give them. So the fact that a student can take the time and participate in two different things and also be able to do their schoolwork and keep up with all those pieces, but the flexibility around during the regular season, things, they can work through it, you know, from a coach to coach and scheduling wise, but the fact that we won't, we are so resistant on changing a date for a sectional championship game. To me, it's just baffling. When we talk about we're trying to get as many opportunities for kids as we can. Just makes no sense to me. I've shared that very bluntly, and
Particularly when there's 2 weeks in between the last regular season game and the beginning of the sections, it makes absolutely no sense.
Yeah, I mean, if we, well, everyone's feedback, I vote for the two sport, allow them to play two sports. And then, you know, the assumption is we'll be in the playoffs. You know, sometimes we won't lose the season. But, I mean, if you are, there's nothing saying coaches could arrange to have their own one. That's what I wish would have happened. You just arrange your own game. And,
Yeah, obviously those are good. When you get to sectionals,
Yeah.
those they're sanctioned at that
Yeah,
game,
yeah,
so
yeah.
you can't just do it. Absolutely, I think it'd be great.
so I'm for both. Just
And I don't, again, you can certainly give me your feedback now if you want. I'm not looking for that at the moment. I think it's a conversation, but we do need to make a decision as to how we want to do that.
Ron, I'm not as fluent with this one as Mike and Joe. I guess I'd like to, if maybe you could send us the pros and cons, and are there any safety issues for the students where, you know, they try to do two things in one day and maybe get injured because they were already playing in one sport and then they try to play another one?
The coaches do work so well together that the girls can make absolutely everything. And they are going from 7 a.m. until 10 at night.
Well, I just
Doing
would
it all.
hate to see one get
And
hurt.
it's a personal choice. I mean, I think any sport, obviously you have the risk of injury
Right.
when you're playing multiple and getting tired. And there's different movements between a softball and a flag football, you know, just
Right.
cutting and things, you know, so that naturally could cause. But again, we had an example last year where someone was signed up to do two and got into it about a week and a half and then was all nervous because they're a fall athlete and came to me and said, if I don't do this, are you going to hold it against me? And I'm like, you know, it was too much for this athlete. So the conversation became around, take a breath. We're not gonna, you know, there's not about forcing you to do these things. Chose what she wanted to do and then stuck with that. So there's a little bit of personal,
I would
what
lean-
you can handle as an athlete as well.
I would lean towards letting them do what they think they can do, and give them as much opportunity as we can give them. I just wondered if there was any safety concerns with them.
I think that is, you know, that's my only negative that I see in terms of potential for injury and also the stress that is involved in playing.
Well, that's another
sports.
issue, but that's a good point. You don't want to get all stressed out because they don't know which one to go to or whatever.
And our coaches, as you said, were very good about that. Regular season was great, honestly. They worked together. We adjusted games amongst ADs. Again, as in our section, the ADs knew it. So we would try to manage the start times of games so that they could play in one, get to the other one. We managed the regular season very well.
Well, what are the odds that they couldn't physically get from one to the other if there's like a distance between them?
And that's pretty much what happened for this, you know. And we worked again with that section to try to move that to a different time or date. Didn't happen. So then we brought it back locally to try to move that. And again, just at that point, they weren't budging. But
I'm inclined to let the kids do what they want to do and just as long as, the safety issues are,
Yeah, I mean, the one thing we did put in place to help was, a primary sport. We had them sign to say, I don't know how much you want to hold them to it, but at least it gave something to say, hey, if we get in this situation, we had something to say that you're going to, play the sport you chose as your first choice.
The biggest negative is the stress associated with letting your friends and your teammates down.
Yeah.
So
And that is
that's what it came down to.
devastating.
Okay, yeah. Again, it's a great opportunity. It's flag football is a growing sport, but it has caused this ripple effect. It kind of fits what we even believe. We want to give experiences and opportunities, but at the same time, also a positive. We had to, we were successful in both, and it put us at a disadvantage. So, doing well actually hurt us because we both ended up in a championship the same day. And as you said, Gene, one section here and 3.5 hours away.
Oh, yeah.
There was no opportunity to make that work.
Were students cut from like the softball program?
No.
No? Or flag football?
And the thing that was, again, I think it was stated, it is really tough, is we did also have students who played softball that were not dual participating athletes. So, if a softball player who's played a whole season now and now in a championship, and he's getting penalized
No.
and is not a dual participating athlete, but that was the program that ultimately suffered. So, it's, again, I think you're right, Mike, it's a kind of a lose-lose, like there's not a great answer. We're all battling the same thing, we're all asking the same questions, trying to figure it out. We are more than willing as the ADs in the area, as we did to work and make that happen. But for whatever reason, they decided to choose dates that are going to be conflicting again.
Well, it sounds like they don't want to allow it, but they want the schools to decide. They don't want to be the bad guy.
But there's no reason Section 4 can't move their date. That's just ridiculous.
I agree.
Because that is within our control. For Section 4.
Yes. Yeah, once you get outside of the section, obviously, there's regional. So, thank you. Again, just trying to put these things on your radar is what's coming at us. We certainly want to use your feedback to make the best decision for our kids, but at the same time, give them the opportunities they deserve. So, that's what I have. All right. Thank you, guys.
Okay, Jill, we're gonna let you come up and.
Thank you all so much for letting me have some of your time tonight. My director for Boys and Girls Club of America wanted to be here tonight, but he had last-minute issues at home that prevented that. So I'm kind of speaking on behalf of Boys and Girls Club of America and, of course, us here locally. But the main thing I wanted to say tonight is just how grateful we are at the Boys and Girls Club. I don't want to get choked up, but things were really grim when I got recruited in 3 summers ago. We were coming out of COVID. Things were really upside down. We were on a good night maybe seeing about 5 kids. And sadly, they were in talks of are we going to be able to continue to be the Boys and Girls Club, or are we going to have to look at becoming a community center, which would have been just really awful. I was a club kid when I was young, and that experience meant a lot to me. Sometimes the snack that I would get would be my dinner for that night, and the connections that I made there were very valuable and helped me become the person that I am today. So the club is near and dear to my heart, and without your support, this partnership, and the staff that we work with, I don't know where we'd be right now. And things are really thriving, and we have lots and lots of kids. And I wanted to bring you a few numbers. We currently have, from the Owego District, 535 kids with memberships at the club. 384 of them are 12 and under, and 151 of them are over 13s. And I hope that that number will only grow now that we have the teen area, rec area for them, and we're working to try to provide some programming there as well. I have a meeting with Lockheed Martin coming up. They're going to look at trying to do some different things with us. As we know, with working with the Career Center here, they're kind of struggling there. So hopefully there are some grant funds that we can work with them on. But I'd love to have any of you come over for a tour. Just give me a call or shoot me an email, and I'll walk you through. It is very different from when I was young. Things really are coming along and looking much nicer. So while I'm here, on behalf of Boys and Girls Club of America, and of course here locally, they wanted to present Corey with an award for being just a champion of youth and his dedication and commitment to youth in our area. And we sure are very grateful from all of you and your continued support and what it really means. I'd be happy to answer any questions, or like I said, please stop by and see us. We'll take you through. But we have 62 kids signed up in the after-school program, and that's grades 3rd through 8th. And I just love hearing the laughter and being full to the brim with all the kids and our staff, our board, everyone, all the volunteers. We're just so grateful. And I hope you all know that, what it means to us. But hopefully we can get a little picture together after.
Really, this is on behalf of the entire board and the support that obviously the board gives from a budget standpoint and our aftercare programs and things of that nature. So without that, you know, we probably would be in a different place. But I think, I don't know how many years ago it was, Jill. I think it was right when you took
3
over.
summers ago in August.
One of the things we were trying to figure out was how do we get kids more exposed to the club, right? Because it was a place where, you know, yourself and several others had been. So a lot of brainstorming around, we have this aftercare program, how do we figure out, obviously Tony's been great with transportation, that we can take kids right there to the club. Some kids choose to go to the club, other kids choose to stay in the aftercare program. But I think the exposure long term of trying to expose them to it at a young age, that hopefully on the weekends or when they have other time that they'll pop into the club and use the club and engage with other kids in the community. So I think so far it's worked pretty well, and that's obviously a tribute to all the work we've been doing over there. So thank you.
Thank you very much, all of you.
So I think we're good. We're good on those pieces. I just wanted to recognize our cross-country head coach, Jack Heath. His son is back here and put a phenomenal video together of the event we had here on campus on Friday night. So I know that event started out with the intention of about 20 teams, and there was a little glitch in the sign-up system, and they ended up with 33 teams. And 3,500 is probably light on my estimate of the number of people that were on campus. There were 900 runners. That didn't include the youth race of probably 50 of our little elementary 6th graders that were involved in that race as well. But John put a ton of time into this and deserves a ton of credit. A lot of volunteers from the community that were parking, directing people. It was all hands on deck, and he just does a phenomenal job with that. And I think one thing that goes unnoticed maybe a little bit is the number of people that came into the community for that event. You know that they stopped at Ice Cream Works, they stopped and probably got pizza at Mario's or wherever, had dinner, probably bought some gas maybe if they needed gas for their car. But putting on an event like that to me is just much bigger than the event itself. And for John, this is the 2nd year, and the place is all lit up, and it's really a cool event. If you've never been, you should check it out sometime or check the videos out. I think the kids probably the race they get most excited about because it's different, right? And They've already talked about some ideas for next year, maybe doing the race on Friday and then looking at the potential for a community race on Saturday night where folks might come in. So I think that, you know, hats off to them for putting in that work, because it's extra and they don't have to do it, but they do it for kids, and it turned out really, really well. So thank you to John, and thanks to Noah for putting that great video together. We're going to get John here and recognize him at one of our future meetings as well. Just wanted to bring up Marathon Health. I know that Marcy has sent out 2 dates that we kind of narrowed down to 9/26 and 9/30. This is really a joint meeting with the Maine Enwell School Board to continue conversations around the presentation that you saw from Marathon Health. So if you could get back to her on those particular dates, that would be greatly appreciated. Just to give you a heads up, so it's becoming more and more common practice, I guess you would call it. It's probably a bad word, but there seems to be more of these nationwide social media threats that are going on that ultimately end up infiltrating into our regions and other regions across the state, different states. So we did send out a letter today. There was a threat. There was a non-credible threat. It had nothing to do with our district. Binghamton decided to start out with a half day. I believe they got to the point where they deemed it not credible as well. But just so you're aware, this is ongoing and takes hours and hours of time from our SROs and our administrators to try to investigate and get to the bottom of these things. And letter just went out to inform parents again that, you know, we have these protocols in place, and you know, obviously reporting anything that you see as well so that we can investigate is always really, really important. But I think, unfortunately, it's going to be one of these things that just continues, and you know, just the world that we're kind of living in today. So we did send that out to inform them. We also sent them out, families out, a notification on the new law for informing families and students of drills, so evacuation drills, lockdown. It was initially done for lockdown drills, but they've now included all evacuation drills. So we send information out that kind of outlines everything you know, that we do. So it's a 24-hour notice to say, hey, we're going to have some drills. Could be sometime in the next week, but you have to give folks a heads up now, which makes sense with some of the trauma that comes from, especially with our little guys in lockdowns and things of that nature. So we've done that, and that's out there in case you get any feedback. So the other night, and thanks to the board for taking the time to meet with the leadership team, and we had a workshop which was open to the public to come watch. We didn't end up, I don't believe, getting anyone, but we talked through really thinking about our strategic plan that we've had that was developed in 2021. And we talked about some of the priority areas that were within that plan, what we've accomplished, and then some areas where we're still working to accomplish some different things. I know there's 2 items particularly that come out. One is building a stronger mentor program for our students, and the other one is starting to develop capstone projects for our students. And as we explained to the board the other night, the change in the Blue Ribbon Commission coming from the State Education Department, there's going to be different pathways for students to choose, and for them to express and to share their learning will be done a lot of times through capstone type projects. So that's an area that we continue to evolve and work on. You can kind of scroll down a little bit. So these are just the 4 pillars. We are a professional learning community, but just to get a sense. So we talked a lot about how everything really should come back to our mission and vision, and really our mission of why do we exist, what's our core fundamental purpose. And then our vision is really what do we aspire to be as a school district. So we spent a lot of time talking about that, and we got some great feedback and we had some rotations at the end. And obviously, we want to talk about collective commitments, which we do that every year, or teams do that. Our PLC teams have conversations about what they're going to collectively commit to. And then obviously targets and timelines. What are the goals that we're setting? We had a conversation earlier on the old PGPs and setting goals of that nature. So, and tracking those things. So mission, you know, really there's some words that just kind of stand out of here. I'm not going to read those to you, but I mean, you look at a mission statement, you want people to be able to communicate what that is. Most can't reiterate the entire mission statement, but can they pick out kind of the key words that hopefully represent the school district. And then we've got vision as well. Keep going down. So here's the district priority areas that we've been working on since 21. And hopefully this spring we can bring the same facilitator back that we had in 21 and kind of revisit and look at 2.0 of that process that we did, where we received feedback from the community through thought exchange, feedback from staff. We had a large stakeholder group of about 70 students, staff, administrators, and really all together kind of developed these priority areas. And I think it's time to kind of take that next step and reset and see what the next few years of goals that will come from that. So we've got these are our priority areas: engaging learning for all, and challenging learning for all. We've got culture, collaboration. Third one, human capital, and then the fourth one is wellness and student support. So those are kind of our big bucket areas that were in that strategic plan that was done in 21. You can go right down through. So we've talked a lot about, we obviously had a change in our mascot. Everybody knows that. But thinking of moving forward and embracing, and a lot of the conversations that we had this summer was thinking about our district and how we can link ourselves to our new mascot and our new identity of who we are. So we came up with SOAR, which is really obviously everything we do is about students. Providing opportunities, we want to accelerate them in any way possible through different activities and learning, and then preparing them for the future. Are they ready when they walk away from us after their senior year? Are they ready for their future, whether it's to go to college or whether it's to go into a career? We want to make sure that they're prepared for that. So SOAR kind of came about from that. So these were really the areas that we talked about the other night at the strategic planning session. We talked about our professional learning communities and things that we do within those communities. We talked about learning and achievement, where we've been at in terms of some of our state assessments, local assessments, different things of that nature. We talked about pathways and partnership development, so that's around our career center. We're working on developing these pathways in our high school for our students, and conversations around internships and co-ops and giving kids personalized experiences as much as we can. We talked a bit about our caregivers and the community in general, and feedback and communication cycles within that. We talked about health and wellness, obviously being super important for our kids and for our staff. We know that our staff need to be in a great place. Our kids are going to be in a great place. So providing some of those pieces of support for them. We talked about recruitment and development in this day and age of it's getting tougher and tougher out there, especially in some particular certification areas around special ed or some of the science areas or math. It's becoming more and more competitive. So thinking about how can we recruit differently and how can we develop folks and keep them from a long-term perspective. And then the final piece, which really obviously the capital finance of everything, supports everything that we're really trying to do. And we've got a real heavy technology district. We talked a little bit about HR intertwined in there. I just want to talk just briefly about this, and so folks knew that what our conversations were about the other night. So these are the focus areas. This presentation is on this agenda. And so people can certainly access that and go through it. But I'd ask you to just kind of go down to the bottom, where it says goal, that's about goals. So go up one, yeah. So we talked about a goal model and a professional learning community, kind of what that looks like, and really the measurable goals are where we need to be when thinking about a professional learning community. And you can see the alignment of the district. It says 4, but you really probably anywhere between 4 and 6 goals to really be concise on. And then really 2 goals at ability level, 1 team goal and 1 individual goal. And then the goal really, how do we line all that up so that we're all rowing the boat in the same direction is really the goal. So you can go to those. So these are just some draft proposed goals that I shared with the board. There's some of the percentages that we're still working on, and we're going to bring those back to you in an October meeting to try to finalize these goals. But you can see the first one we kept, which was our graduation rate, the dropout rate. The second one was obviously our state assessments, and not knowing what's going to happen down the road with Regents exams and how many students are going to choose that pathway. But we did include that. Obviously, we've got yellow in math, science, in some capacity in 312. So looking, how do we rank in terms of our region, but also how do we do in terms of the state, and then, you know, like districts of ours from a socioeconomic standpoint, that we can do some analysis of. Goal number 3, all students in second grade, I think the data shows us that if our students at that point are succeeding, they're probably going to continue to grow. When they're behind at that point, it becomes a real big catch-up game. So we've got that piece around literacy, number sense, and then using our NWEA assessments that we give 3 times a year that really allow us to see some growth points of how students are doing throughout the entire year. And that's a norm-based assessment that you get. It's a comparative to nationally to other students in districts around the country. So it gives us a good sense of kind of where we fall there. We're also working on a weighted college and career readiness goal. So we're having a lot of conversation on what components of that we pull together to use to create that goal. And then attendance has been a big push for us. We've been working with a company called Everyday Labs. I know Stacy had her list this morning when I saw her in the building that I'm going to see my chronically absent students and phone calls, and obviously it's super important that our kids are in attendance, and we're trying to make a strong effort to improve and also educate folks on what chronic absence really is. And it starts typically at such a young age that I think we need to do a better job of informing people on what it really means to be when you do miss a day, as opposed to maybe taking a long weekend here and there, that you're going to miss a lot at some point. So that's a quick overview of that night. I certainly appreciate the board, all your feedback. I think there are a lot of conversations that we had eventually, which I had shared with you, around equity and providing opportunities for all our students, and knowing that we're borderline of the 50% as free and reduced socioeconomic status, and being able to provide all those opportunities for all our kids is really got to be at the forefront of our focus. So thank you for taking the time to do that and allowing us to be able to share that information with you. So I'll bring you updated district goal information at probably October 7th.
So back to new district business. Policies.
Oh, sorry, I missed one. Yep.
Oh,
yeah, Bob.
No worries.
Dr. Farrell's going to talk a little bit about pilots, and just one particular pilot that's a bit of a concern, obviously, for the district. Has been for a while, and continues to be. And he's just going to kind of take us through really some of the options for the board to consider when it comes to this pilot.
So the long-range projection back last spring shows that in the 26-27 school year, we're going to have an issue with the Central New York Oil and Gas pilot, which will be ending. And what I want to do tonight is just kind of try to take you through that to get an understanding of how that works and the challenges that provides us as a school district. And to understand up front, this is really somewhat it's pretty much out of our control. These are rules set by the state, and the pilot agreements are created by the IDA, which is a local government agency. It's the Industrial Development Agency, who contracts and creates payments in lieu of taxes, which is what a pilot is, instead of being on the actual tax rolls like everybody else that owns a house or a residence or a business that does not have a pilot agreement. It's usually large businesses and large industrial places that get these agreements. And the complication with pilot agreements, it never really used to be an issue a long time ago, 20 years ago, until the tax cap formula came into place in New York State. The tax cap formula, what everybody understands about the tax cap is that it's a 2% tax cap. It's not what it is, all right? It's actually a formula that has multiple steps inside of it, and pilots are part of that formula. And what I want to do tonight is explain the relationship between a pilot and the tax levy, and what happens when a pilot ends, and how it has to transition from being a pilot to the tax levy, to the actual tax rolls, okay? Now, Central New York Oil and Gas is a $3.28 million pilot. It is the largest taxpayer in the school district, okay? And if you look up there on the right column under pilot revenue, we receive in this school district every year $3.879 million in pilot revenue. That is a high number. We are a school district in New York, in this state, that receives a large revenue from pilots. It's not typical of every school district in the state. So 3.28 of that 3.8 is Central New York Oil and Gas, okay? Now the tax levy, the board's responsibility and the district's responsibility is to pass a budget every single year. What we're doing, in a sense, is passing what the tax levy is going to be, all right? So we last year approved a budget, and the voters approved the budget with a 1.99 increase in the tax levy to make a tax levy of $18,256,427, which you can see in that second column there. Now, the tax levy limit for next year is going to likely be about 3.38%. That's what it's likely, the estimate cap, what it will be, all right, based on the numbers we see. That means that the board can pass a budget and a tax levy up to 3.38% increase, so up to $18,873,494, which you're seeing in the second row for 25-26. The pilot is still a pilot at that point in 25-26. And so the revenue for that is still coming from that. It's not on the tax roll. But the following year, it ends that year, so now it has to go back onto the rolls. And the only way that works is if you increase, the tax cap increases with that pilot payment in it. All right? So what literally happens, that's why the blue arrow is moving there, that $3.28 million comes from the revenue side over here in miscellaneous revenue and now goes to the tax roll underneath the tax cap formula. So that means the tax levy has to go up to $22,531,177 in that school year. Well, that's a 19.38% increase. You have to advertise that increase on the property tax report card to all of the taxpayers in the school district. Now, the problem with that is we can go out and explain to everybody that 3.28 million of that increase, 17.38, which is the highlighted bottom number, of the increase is actually Central New York Oil and Gas coming on the rolls. It has nothing to do with their household. It's just them coming on the rolls. And the other difference, which is about 2%, just estimated, is what it would normally be. Okay? But that's how we would have to get the pilot back on the rolls. Questions before I go any further?
Just I'd like to add something. So 25-26, we said estimated 3.38 tax levy increase. That, if we keep it under 3.38, all you need is a simple majority to pass it. You can go out with a levy higher than 3.38, right? So you can go out for a levy higher than that, but for, just to keep it a simple majority, you have to keep it under the 3.3.
Even at the 19%, right, because it's following the formula, they can go out with a simple majority as well.
Correct.
That's correct. That's exactly right. Any other
But
clarifying questions?
A nitpick, Bob, it's not going back on the tax roll, it's going on the tax roll for the first time, it's going to treat it as a part.
Yes.
I didn't mean to nitpick on that.
Take the word back out. That's right.
And
It's going on the tax roll. Yes.
what the taxpayers hear is 19%. I heard a snicker when you said 19%. That's what they hear.
Correct.
What they're not hearing is the oil and gas assessments are going on the tax roll as well.
Correct.
So if 2% was the tax levy for that year without this, then my tax bill is going to show a 2-something% increase, not a 19% increase, okay? But oil and gas is going to be paying like everybody else now.
Right.
And if you looked at the total assessed valuation for the district, it's going to increase by whatever their assessed valuation is, and it's going to make everything hunky-dory. But again, given the snicker I heard, people are only going to have the 19%. So the trick is, how do you explain it in terms that someone like, I mean, I've been dealing with this since day one.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I mean, this is Monopoly's nightmare, and it still is. You know, and it's not changing. So we need to be able to explain it in the simplest terms. And the only really way to do that in my mind is to say, yeah, it's 19%, but normalize it and say your tax bill is going to be somewhere in this vicinity.
Which is always tricky because we don't have any control over equalization rates in towns and how that's going to work.
We
So
do this in May.
Careful balance.
The equalization rates and the final assessments come out in August, September,
That's
and
right.
you've already had to vote.
That's right.
And so I tell you that your tax levy is let's do a normal year, 2%.
Yeah.
Simple. But you live in town, we're in town of Owego, something shifts from town of Owego to Nichols. And the big town, a piece of the big town goes to the little town. The town of Owego is actually winds up being 1.7%. And Nichols winds up, because we know we've had this happen before.
We have.
Nichols winds up being 9%.
That's right.
They got a small piece of the big town. So equalization rates on their own can really mess with your mind and assessments. But
That's correct.
the key here is that 19%, I mean, it is a total increase in the tax levy, the total dollars that we levy to all of our taxpayers. It's the whole pie. But your piece of the pie is not going to be 19%. Your piece of the pie is going to be a normal percentage, something like the 2%. I mean, you can't possibly guess because you don't know what the equalization rates are.
Well, that's the other part of this is that this is in the town of Nichols, I believe, which then their full assessment is now in that town, and how the equalization rates get affected to the town of Owego and the rest of the other three, I couldn't tell you that. That's outside of our control. And therefore, we could say exactly what you're saying. Listen, it's only going to be 2%. But August will show up and you will get phone calls.
Right.
Because you will have a town that'll go up to 9%. And then you're going to ask, why did that happen? And it's because of equalization rates and how the assessor's
So
office
all we
does that.
know in May is what we know in May, and that is
That's right.
how much the total levy is going to increase.
So we've been operating as far as budget-wise at a 22.5-ish. So we've been operating the tax levy plus the pilot revenue. Full time.
Yes, we always operate as that revenue is always there in our budget, correct?
It's in a different revenue.
It's just in a different line. That's
They
correct.
have a separate revenue for it.
So you've got a pot of money that's the pilots and revenue and then the rolls.
Yeah.
And really the simple of this is that you're taking this money from Central New York Oil and Gas, the 17%, and you're dropping it into the rolls.
Yeah.
And then from our standpoint, we're really only probably in that 2% range So nothing's really technically happening other than the money is going from the pilot to the rolls.
Yeah.
However, and you'll probably, I'm sure you're gonna talk about this,
The options.
the options and the concerns
Yeah.
that come with.
Before we do that, though, including, correct me if I'm wrong, you've been doing this a lot longer than I have. So, before the tax cap, if this was the case, would it just transfer?
Before the tax cap, pilots were a separate revenue code, but they were not part of any formula. They were used to balance the budget just like they are today,
Right.
but there was no tax cap formula, okay? So, school districts, whenever there's a surplus generated, back in those days, surplus was generated more or less on both sides of the budget, on the revenue side and on the expense side.
Right.
Fund balance, I should say.
Right.
Right? Now it's mostly on the expense side because there aren't any excess revenues as a rule to
Right.
amount to anything.
Right.
But that was why Monopoly in his infinite wisdom, when they first came out with this tax cap formula, Mario Cuomo said it's a 2% tax cap.
Right.
It never was. Not from the first year, not even till now, 20-some years later. It's never been. It's that one line inside the formula. As you know, that's the 2% max, and that can change too.
That's right.
So it's so complicated, as if it wasn't complicated before. Like I said, when you come up with a levy to balance your budget in May, you have no idea what the Office of Real Property in Albany is going to do in August with assessments and equalization rates. The school has nothing to do with that, no control whatsoever. So you just tell the taxpayers all that you can tell them, and that is our tax levy increase this year is 3.38%, right? And that's it. That's all you said. That's all you know. I mean, you can use the prior year's numbers for assessments and equalization rates, but that's dangerous because you don't know if anything can change there. If they get a major taxpayer on the rolls or off the rolls, it can change. Like in our case, that's something we hadn't thought about. But if our assessed valuation goes up by whatever that number is, what's that going to do to the four other towns?
Well, that's what I was saying about Central Illinois Gas. If it's in Nichols, if it's a $144 million assessment, that's going to change the entire assessment. That's going to change the entire way the calculation.
And I apologize because I know I've been doing this for 40 years, so I don't mean to make it sound easy. It's not easy at all. I've never found a way to explain it easily, and I'm not doing a very good job tonight either. But that's something I hadn't even thought of. All these years we've been worried about when this rolls off.
Yeah.
So
I'm glad you're bringing it up because that's why I want to talk about it with the options.
in my quick assessment, then the other towns are going to go down.
That's exactly where I was thinking, but there's no guarantee.
Well, but there's nothing, and do we know of anything major happening in Nichols or County Union or any of those? Probably not.
I don't believe so.
Like
Not
the key thing you mentioned earlier, other than the can company in Nichols,
yeah,
because Best Buy's gone now.
they're now on rolls,
Right.
so they're fully on.
So they're off. So, but that is something we might want to run the numbers and see, because it's going to have a downside impact for the other towns.
And then there's Lockheed right behind this one.
Yeah.
With the helicopter.
Oh,
That's not on.
we'll be real popular with the four small ones.
And it's the next one.
Yeah.
So,
But
yeah, it just keeps going. It's a lot smaller, but it keeps going. It's the same problem. So, just before we go to the options, I want to make sure that there's an understanding that this has been put up through the House and Assembly now twice.
It's been on
I've been on the
two
governor
different
twice,
governors' desks.
Twice.
Vetoed it.
vetoed twice. So, to fix the problem.
And all
So
it
the
is a change in formula based on pilots.
So we've lobbied, we've tried to, and we've had both legislatures actually agreeing that it's a problem because they know the issue, but we are not getting much success between two different governors now to get this remedy. For districts like ours, this is a problem.
it is, because I mean, even districts like Binghamton in huge districts. Elmira City, they don't have that close to the pilots we have. And they're so much bigger than we are.
Yeah.
So it's just an anomaly that we had to deal with. I guess you could say the IDA is doing a good job, but we're the ones that have to live with this. And as I pointed out earlier, we have no say in it. The IDA comes to us and will say, will you endorse this pilot? And even if we say no, it goes through anyway. Because they're not all big ones.
No, they're typically very
apartment
small.
complexes on the other side of the river
Yeah.
over there. We said no on that, they did it anyway. Like, created like 2 jobs.
It was about 60 grand.
Yeah, but they did it anyway. They asked for our endorsement, we said no, and they did it anyway.
Yeah.
So and that's what they did with this one, to give you a perspective. We were on Talcott Street when these pilots came on. There was no, when these pilots came on, this is a key point, there was no tax cap formula. That's how long they've been out there. They came on before the tax cap formula, so nobody even gave it a thought. And then boom, a few years later, the tax cap formula came out. So these have been bouncing around for how many years, Don?
Oh, it's got to be 20.
Yeah,
This one's 20.
Yeah, at least, well,
It was 15 and then we extended 5.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
5 of us. So, which is, we've been able to work with the IDA. So let's go to the options. Here's, I mean, these are 3, I can't say they're all the options, but there's 3 to start the conversation. And just so you understand, this is a 2-year out problem. It's good that we're doing this now to start this process, because whatever we decide to do is going to take quite a bit of work on all of our parts to figure this out. The first one is working with the IDA to renegotiate the pilot agreement and extend it into the future. We have done that before. We have done it with this particular company, and it extended it out 5 more years. Here we are again, the 5-year period's over. We can go back to them and say, okay, can we do this again for 5 more years? The problem shows up 5 more years from now. That's if no legislation changes with tax cap. That's the simple sense of 1. 2 is a gradual return. We did this with Best Buy. Now, Best Buy was a much smaller pilot, right? That was about $300,000. We did it over the course of 2 years, $150 each, got it back on the rolls. Now Best Buy is back on the rolls, fully assessed and paying taxes like everybody else. You could do something like that, but $3.28 million is how much do you extend that agreement for and gradually do it. You can't do it 2 years in a row. 1.5 means you're going out at maybe a 9% and a 9%. You see what I'm saying? So you have to spread it out over quite a few years to make it so that it's not so impactful in terms of percentages. Is one option. I have no idea whether they've even entertained it. Best Buy, we actually went on and met with their executives, and they agreed to it. So that's how this goes. You have to actually meet with people who run these companies and get them to agree.
And it's not just the IDA, the company has to.
You have to sit with them.
Right.
So New York Oil and Gas was gracious enough the last time to extend it. And the thing to know too for them, nothing changes. They're still writing the same check.
That's correct.
Whether they're over here or whether they're over here.
So we have, and they don't always understand it, so we have to explain to them and the relationship and with the school district and what it means. That's significant revenue for the school district. So those are the conversations.
Is it just in New York State? Is it even still Sinai, by the way? Didn't they stop?
I believe it is.
It's still Sinai?
I got it.
So they're just in New York State?
I don't know the answer to that.
You would think if it's central.
I don't know the answer
I
to
don't
that.
know.
Because you would think if they were not the only district that they're dealing with. But I don't know.
I'm unsure of the answer.
Just
to
a
that.
question.
The final one is that, well, you try to get it back on the rolls. What that would require is a pretty strong public relations plan where everybody in here would have to participate, and we'd have to help people understand how to pass that budget at 19.38. That is option 3. And then it's on. And then from there on out, it's on the rolls and it's like everybody else, and the problem is then not a problem anymore. You don't have to keep dealing with that with this.
Talk about the risk.
There is risk. So the risk is if it votes down and contingency is 0 or 1, then the school district lost $3.3 million.
What's the incentive for the company to take it off pilot status? Is there an incentive for that?
Well, I think if it's a renegotiate, right, if it's renegotiated, they're renegotiating a rate that's probably flat over time, and they know what it is every time. If going on the being in this fully assessed property now as everybody else, they're going to pay the increase that everybody else pays.
Yeah,
So that's the advantage of them staying on the pilot.
and that's where you have to press it, because they would be able to stay flat every year for, say, if we extended it for 10 years. So divide the I'm just throwing a number out, the 3.2 by 10, so 320,000 a year. You know, we're
Save them one.
save them. And if our budget levy goes up, they don't receive that impact. Theirs is flat. So that's an incentive for them, obviously, on that kind of money. I mean, I don't know how much their revenue line is, but certainly it's a savings for them. So that's really your trump card right there.
Right, which is what the whole purpose of pilots are, right? Is to say, we're going to tax you with this, and therefore that agreement, they know what that is, and therefore they're willing to build whatever they're going to build in your area. That's why they do that.
Like Don said, the catastrophic impact here is you're getting the $3.2 million now in the pilot revenue code, but if it has to shift to the tax levy revenue code, and then you lose your budget twice as far as the votes go, you have to go up at the last year's budget, right?
Well, the levy stays
at what it was the prior year,
which is $18,873,000,
which doesn't
not 22.
That doesn't include the $3.2 million, but now it's whether it shifts to the tax rolls, the assessed valuation does, but the $3.2 million is gone. And imagine what that would do to programs if we had to lose that kind of revenue.
The only incentive
You can't survive that.
The major incentive for the district is going back on the rolls, is that if we make it through 1 year, we don't have to worry about
Then
it.
it's done.
It's done. That's
So
correct.
if we have a magic PR person that can explain it in terms people understand. I think the closest thing you said, Bob, was actually the 1738 in this case, it belongs to Sinai, and the 2%, the rest of the 2% is what goes to the rest of us.
That's right.
But that's a gamble.
It is a gamble. And it is a significant challenge. I will definitely say that is a high rate. And it would be a very serious, I would say a very serious public relations campaign that you would have to do for well in advance.
I think it's worth talking to Sinai and see what they're willing to do. Because if we could advertise it over 10 years, I mean, we'd have the problem. We'd have a bump for 10 years.
We would.
But it's better than that bump. That's a cliff as
right.
opposed to a bump.
The biggest problem I see is that you could go out and tell the public this is what's going to happen, but if you don't know the equalization rate,
And you don't get that till August.
then you're going to look like a fool and that's. I think the community. If you explain it to the community, I think they could probably swallow it. But if you come back and you tell them it's going to be a 3% tax levy, and then equalization rate happens and you're at 6%, there's going to be it's not going to be good.
Yeah, and you don't control any of the equalization rates, not even telling where we go.
Right.
But I mean, if something happens in Nichols, well, usually the smaller towns, we have 5 towns. So the smaller ones don't tend to impact us that much. It's the other way around. When something on our end changes and shifts to the smaller towns, where they really get blasted. It doesn't typically work the other way, because we're the biggest town in the 5-town limit.
That's probably the biggest thing that people struggle to understand.
But Joe, you're right. From a perception, in reality, it is not going to be an even understanding of 2%. It's just not going to be that.
No.
It's going to be what people get on their actual bill is going to be different than that.
Right.
Some higher, some lower.
Well, we've had situations where we've gone out at 0, and then the equalization comes in, and somebody's at 1 or 0.9, and then they call and say, wait a minute, you said it was going to be 0. Well, our levy was 0.
Well,
we don't control it.
Right, when we put that in the newsletter, that's what they expect to see on their tax bill, and it never works that way.
That is the challenge of the entire levy and budgeting process. The way it works.
I try to explain to people that it's the increase in the total piece of the pie. You know, the total pie that gets distributed over 5 towns. But the Office of Real Property doesn't do their thing till August.
So I've opened up conversations with the IDA and waiting to hear back. So we're going to set up a meeting just to begin to talk about these options and see what their thoughts are. And we'll bring that feedback back to the board, and you know, we're going to have to.
Any clarifying questions or anything at all?
Does that, I just threw that 10-year amortization out there, but does that even work? Or is 300,000 still too high?
Well, considering the fact that a 1% increase on our levy is $175,000, you're looking at 2% every time, so you could do it. But it's really, all you're doing is you're just rolling them back on. But I look at that as you're straight up flat. You're
losing.
You're losing revenue that you could have gotten.
You'd have to go out at 4 or more every year.
That's right.
Yeah.
To recoup that on that 2%.
I'm just thinking that I'd rather, you know, if you lost, say, even 200,000 a year, that's easier to solution than 3.2 million.
Yeah.
If you had a choice between the two, yes.
Yeah, because you're never going to survive that.
You can always manage 200.
Right.
No question. 3.2.
And then after 10 years, it's gone.
And then the problem's over. That's right.
And the difference for them is that they're chipping away at it too. So, you know, but it's the only way I can see it working, right? Because I wasn't making fun of the snicker. Everybody would react to that. I mean, I think that's what they're going to see, 19%.
One of the things that has come up in the past is we're required by law to send home a property tax report card. And that property tax report card must show the limit that we're going out at. And there was question in the past of whether or not we could show on there any information that would indicate this information around what's Central New York Oil and Gas and what's theirs, and I don't believe we can do that. That is outside of our legal ability to do that. So that's the challenge.
You have identified as Central New York, or do you say it's A5?
I don't know, and that's, from what I gather, remember in the past of this problem, when we were talking to legal counsel, they said you can't do that, because the property tax report card is set by New York State. Am I right? You got to send that out that way.
Yeah.
You can't play with that for your own public relations.
QR code to this meeting.
Yeah.
I don't know if you could. I've never thought about a QR code on the property. What do you think? QR code on the property tax report card? No, but you can't. I don't think you can do that. So that's a problem. Anything else to help clarify? All right. Well, we got 2 years, so good.
Yeah, maybe about it, in maybe one of the future work sessions, we could show, especially the new board members, the tax levy chart, how the tax levy chart works with the equalization rates and the assessed valuations. It would help a little bit so you could actually see it, because it really comes down to simple, you know, math. But the variables. The timing of the variables is what kills you. You know, we go out in May and then the other stuff comes out in August and sometimes even September. I've seen equalization rates come out as later than that, actually, October. You know, it depends on
One more thing we didn't get a chance to discuss when Ryan was here, and I just wanted to bring it up. So we had the conversation around the field hockey merger, which is a modified student at this point from Union Endicott who wants to participate in field hockey. They don't have it. The other piece was ice hockey. So there's a regional ice hockey team. I think Manville has their own team. Shenango Forks and Shenango Valley might have a team together. And then there's a few other teams out there, Ithaca and whatnot. But then there's this regional team that they put together for districts like us that might have 2 or 3 kids that want to participate in ice hockey. So just kind of bringing you that in terms of your feedback. It would be about $2,000 per student athlete to participate in that. We've got a handful of kids, I think, that would. I don't know the exact number, but I think we've got 3 or 4 that would be interested in participating on that team so that they can play on an ice hockey team. They'll probably be on a team with kids from Windsor and other local districts that are involved in it. Thoughts, questions?
That would be 2,000
per player.
I'm all about kids having opportunities. Any district that I ever worked in that had students who were participating in ice hockey, I know this is going back, but it was handled by the parent and funding.
There's that option as well. I know some districts have taken it's kind of split out there. Some are incurring the cost of it, and others are not. They're going to their booster clubs or to the parents to say that if they want to participate, they have to.
Is it the same with the field hockey?
Field hockey? No, field hockey is not the same. Yeah.
I would assume that's because of the equipment. I would assume people were playing hockey, having the equipment.
Ice rink time, all those things that get calculated in. So that's just really something from a board standpoint. Do we want to participate in that or not? That's really what it comes down to. And I think this is another one too that you can think about, and we'll come back on October 7th and a little more time to digest it.
Yes, because I think that kind of sounds like a travel team. You've got kids from all different districts. And I know they practice a lot in Vestal. One of the parents has a private rink on their home property. And they practice a lot there. They might even play there for, I don't know. What would the name of the team be?
That's a great question. I'm not sure.
Oh, they do
I'm not even sure what the name of the team.
I did a little research on that. Yeah, they're called.
Yeah, it looks like under the new business as an action item. I don't know if people don't feel like they can vote on it,
Right.
discuss it, but I'm interested in other people's opinion. I'm all for students having these opportunities. I was just wondering where that line is between funding it and supporting it. I support it.
Yeah.
Honestly, I thought you were just giving us the dollar amount for our information. I just assumed it was at their cost. I thought it was a club sport and kind of hockey. That's the thought. For field hockey, just out of curiosity, does that student is their own transportation?
Yep.
It'd be the same with ice hockey. They get themselves
I believe they'd probably have their own transportation. Yeah. The other piece too that I know that's come up is that, again, here's another sport, but girls ice hockey is gaining pretty significant popularity as well. So I think Manville has a core of girls and is looking at possibly having a team in some capacity as well. So I think that'll probably be presented to us at some point down the road. We're not there yet, I don't believe, as far as I know. But just something to keep in mind.
Just a general question on merger, and more to like wrestling. Well, Ryan made it clear that she wants to wrestle for Rigo, which is fine. But if it ever did, if we couldn't find a coach and had to merger with, let's say, Tioga, is it easy to unmerger?
So you have to approve a merger every year. The board would have to approve any merger every year. Yeah. So if it was 1-year agreement with Tioga, the next year, Tioga would have to agree to it too, obviously, to do that, but there's always that possibility. Or the other side of it too is if there's a commitment to try to build a program around that, then knowing it's gonna take us a little time with the youth and getting kids involved. And winter sports, are limited. So that's something I think to consider when it comes to girls wrestling.
Have we ever talked to Tioga about wrestling? Because that's their thing.
Yes,
They're really good.
Yeah, yes it is. You wanna wait on this one too, the ice hockey, or are you?
Well, I mean,
I need to think about it a little more.
yeah,
That's fine.
I'm struggling.
Yeah.
But, I think it would have to come down to vote, obviously, right? So, I don't think, is anyone ready to vote?
I think some of the details need to be made more clear in order to vote, specifically for ice hockey. I'm fine with the field hockey piece of it, it's one student. Just as far as where the expense lies and, so the students that are interested as well and the parents and families know.
Yeah, so if they were to participate, if we agreed to this and they were to participate, the cost from a district standpoint would be about a little over $2,000. But if the district doesn't fund that, obviously that would be on the parents to do that.
Is that only because, and I relate to the travel thing because I'm familiar with, is that only because they're allowed to participate in Section 4 events, like against the combined Shingle Forks,
Is that,
type teams?
I think that's just the cost of the ice rink time primarily that team is going to have to pay for in some sense, and really so it becomes, if districts are paying for it, becomes the share of whoever's a part of that's paying that share for ice time, really.
Yeah, I'm just saying as far as, do they have an option as far as a Section 4, do they have the same opportunities to go to like state competitions and stuff like that if they do that?
I don't know that answer for ice hockey, I'm not sure. I don't recall there's usually a sectional champion, but I don't recall anybody moving on after that, but I could be wrong.
Oh, okay, as far as the size.
Yeah.
There must be like a contact person, right? And there has to be somebody at the head of this whole.
Once upon a time, Binghamton had a team. I don't know who else has a hockey team.
I think still has one, right? And Forks and Valley have one combined. Ithaca's had one. Myers had one. So there's not a lot of them, but.
We do have a state championship for it.
Do they?
Yes, it's just 2 divisions, but in one division too.
Thanks for taking it.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, I'll let Ryan know.
The other district business, 10.1 through 10.5, actually 10.6. The motion to,
That would be minus 10.5.
minus,
You're
minus.
10,
Oh, that's good.
10-4.
Yeah, let's do 10.1 to 10.4. Motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
John said second.
Second.
Right. Discussion on those?
Is John the second?
Yes.
Sorry.
Whispered.
Okay.
Discussion, no.
Jean?
Aye.
Jessica?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
Joe?
Aye.
Nora?
Aye.
John?
10.6, district safety plan, the motion?
It's just.
Or is it just
Just
discussion?
informational, this opens up our 30-day public comment.
Oh, okay, yeah. Any discussion on that? Safety plan? Have there been any changes to the safety plan, major changes from last year to this year?
Not really. Some name changes, positions, pretty straightforward. The biggest one, of course, is what we talked about with our evacuation drills and such. So we just have to notify those, and those are in our program ones.
Any changes from SRO regarding safety plan issue?
No, keep up to date for pretty much.
Very good. Public comments? Didn't get my sheet. Is there a sheet? Yeah, public, okay. Patty Miller? Question mark?
I had a couple of questions, but it wasn't related to the agenda, but speaking of, the one question might go along with the security thing. How, do you have any updates on the new program that you put in, the security thing last year? How it's working and,
The Snyder?
yeah. I don't know how much that costs or anything, but how, do you have any feedback on how it's working and how it's going?
I'm not sure what specific.
I remember the discussion about, it was the software. I can't remember the name, but I guess it went in last year.
Yeah, I can't remember it either. I know I was concerned about the data and
The PA
that kind of
system?
thing, but that was collecting.
It was something that could kind of
Well, it was for
highlight
the
text
iPads that
messages.
they could send
Yeah,
a text or something that was,
That had-
could be construed as a threat.
correct.
They were hot wired, they were like.
Are you talking Gaggle?
Yes,
Oh, yeah,
thank you,
right.
that's
Yeah.
the word, thank you.
Yes, is there any, how is that?
Actually, it works pretty good. We get, the administrators will get alerts at any time of the day or weekend of something that pops on, that might have been said that could be a concern about potential threat or someone harming themselves so we can be real proactive with that if there's some of those concerns.
So what actually happens, it goes into like data of that person that, the red flags that come out, that person, does it go into some kind of?
Yeah, the company's software evaluates that. It really has to do with primarily our Google system that students might or might not use. Other than that, there's really not a whole lot of, they're not scanning Snapchat and all these other things.
Was that thing that happened today part of Gaggle or no?
No, so the thing that happened today started some other state, I think, and then trickled over into Binghamton. Binghamton had a delayed start today for investigating potential threat. There were no findings there with that. So there's a lot of times these things will surface. Like there was one maybe a week ago, and it was Sasquatch Valley from some other state, and then some students took it from Sus Valley, but they were meant Sus Valley, but it wasn't. So it's just it's ongoing. Phil loves it. It's his favorite
That's so much fun.
You're happy with Gaggle?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, overall, it's, there's times where students might be writing essays for public speaking, or they might be, and they're talking about more personal experiences of a relative passing away or things like that. So it hits on certain things, death, frustration, depression, things like that. If it flags it enough, we'll get a notice that says, there's a student that might be struggling, and then we can look at what it is that they're struggling with, and we can get a social worker with them. We can get, if it's something that's extreme, knock on wood, we haven't been there really, that might trigger something bigger like suicide discussion, anything like that. Gaggle will call us immediately, right to our cell phones, right to our, and it could be, during the workday, it could be at 7 a.m., 11:30 on Saturday night, and they will keep calling until you answer. It's good because even if it helps one kid, it's worth it in reality.
They don't really keep data though, it's just a email and a letter, like a student's letter that they wrote.
Yeah.
It's not like they say this child has made 72 threats, like
Yeah.
there's no data attached, it's just somebody's writing usually.
Answer the question. Did you have another one?
No.
Yeah. I think the issue, if I recall, was we don't track the data, maybe they don't track it, but there's always a kind of a question of, is there stored data for this type of intrusion? That's the question. Right?
Yeah, and just, on the record, at some point when they are out of school and they wanna join the military and they
No.
wanna do this or that.
Yeah, I tried to clarify, it doesn't appear
They
there's,
can't under the law. Right.
yeah.
So any contract we engage with any software company,
Right.
they cannot do that. It is part of the contract, it must be in the language of the contract, that they do not track personal information or sell or do anything with it at all.
Right, I
So
knew that
it's,
was, but I know things get hacked and I just wanted to know how,
Yeah, that's,
I don't know how much it cost to put it in, I think it was quite a bit, so I just wanted to update you on it. Thank you.
Do you have another one?
No.
Okay. Jill, you down here? But was that your?
Or it's just presentation.
I know you presented, but I don't know if you had something else on that. Okay. Stephanie? Stephanie? Oh, there you go. Well, no, it's underneath. So, I don't know what this is, it looks like a P.
It's
So I think
line.
it's possibly. Okay. So we have some follow-up items for discussion. The legal services RFP.
The legal services and CM will go out end of this week is a goal, we can get it out for this.
yeah, I'm getting language together right now, so should be, that is-
Try to get it out for this week.
That includes the audit and the, construction.
I think we were going first on the legal and, CM, and then maybe we'll, wait until after the audit presentation, which usually happens mid-October.
Yeah. Your audit's going on right now.
Voting delegate, I think Linda's not here, but she expressed an interest in that.
She did.
We'll vote on that.
I will just add her name.
Talk about a board retreat. I don't know if you got feedback on that.
Did you
I
get
do.
so
I got feedback on that. Didn't bring it down, but, everybody is on board, everybody, I had 5 responses, all 5 were for it. The majority were for half a day, and it was a mix of whether it be a weekday or weekend.
Okay. Just a couple venues in Owego to look at. You don't have to travel so far to half day, you can serve that, look forward to that. So one thing I thought was on here, we had some conversation, I'd like to discuss we talked about the survey, we talked about last time having a committee that Linda and Nora were gonna be on. And through these discussions, it seemed like the main thing was to get more participation. And, you know, if we go back in time, I believe there was a discussion at a previous board meeting last year about having paper ballots. That seems to be the thing that might impact participation by limited knowledge of how these things are going on. So I think the key is to get to the truth. You know, is there a climate issue or there isn't? I don't know if we can rely on 40% response rate to be accurate enough to move it on, put it behind us, or address it, however. But I guess I'd like to discuss the possibility of doing a paper ballot survey, either again with K-12 or independently, and what people's thoughts are on that.
I know from experiences in my work, like as far as you try to get, particularly in difficult times of work, as far as when, you know, also jobs were state and things like that, it was a struggle to get trust in anonymity. You know, you have a individualized link, right? So that link that it's clicked on knows that it's you. And so who sees that link after the fact? And that's where I think partially maybe part of the issue as far as the request for paper is the fact that there isn't that traceability, so you're asking more freely to respond. At least it was from the experience I had at my work.
My concern would just be the validity of paper. How many paper copies that you copy and submit, or We've done electronic surveys for, I know since I've been here, that's pretty much all the surveys we've ever done. I don't know if we've ever done a paper copy survey, whether it's Google survey, whether it's Thought Exchange, Let's Talk. Those are all the tools, so that's what we've used for years, which is why I think that was the approach. The company, we don't get any of that. We got the information when you get the information, so we don't get any of that. It goes directly into the company.
I'm pretty sure Corey had an option, if somebody wanted a paper copy, they could request it, and it would have been sent to them. But I remember the company that we used said that there was no way to really control the paper version. I think it might be a good idea if everybody's willing to do it, we set up another meet with, because that's what these people do, and answer your questions, because there aren't many companies that do this, and they do it nationwide. And they said our participation rate was up there compared to what they see on a national basis. So whether we're happy with it or not, at least we've got that much. But I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I guess like it seems like participation rate would be seems low to me, and I'm not an expert, but and I understand that they said that it was decent response rate.
They did, and you know, again, I'm just trusting what they said because they're the ones with the experience.
Right.
I mean, and what we saw, and another thing to think about too is we just did it, and you go out and do it again. I mean, you know, to me, I don't think it's. I mean, if you want to wait a year and do it again, fine. And if you want to use a different medium, fine. But I don't think doing it on the back of just finishing one makes any sense at all.
Yeah, and I understand that. My concern is that my understanding is that there was, if you break it up into groups, parents, residents, students, employees, the paper was offered to residents, parents, people outside the district. The only people who asked possibly for it were some teachers, and they weren't given the opportunity, but the people who didn't ask for it were given the opportunity. It just doesn't make sense.
I kind of liken it to when we have our tax levy bill. You know, we've got, I don't know, I mean, what are we normally getting on Marcy? How many total votes would you say when we go for the tax levy? Just roughly. 1,100 total votes. Out of how many thousands of taxpayers that live in this?
About 10,000.
Yeah. I'm just saying it always astounds me. You've got all these taxpayers, and yet when you have a budget vote, 10% of them show up to vote. So I wasn't put off by 40%, because I thought it's a lot better than what shows up for the tax vote, you know. So it never occurred to me that was, you know, excessively low, especially when the company itself is telling you, based on our experience, which is all we do, you're on the higher side of it. So I don't see. I mean, if next time there's a paper medium that we can use, fine. I don't have a problem with that. But I just don't see where we want to do it again right away.
I don't know if the request, I didn't read it as the expectation is to do it right now. I think to John's point and Joe's point, there was a question, the request was made and it wasn't honored. And I think the participation rate was a little.
We asked them to.
Paper copies were requested and the
make a
request was
paper
denied.
copy option available, and they did.
Right, so your anonymity piece would have been a challenge because the company wasn't going to key in all of those paper responses. We would have had to have an employee take time out of their day to key in all those responses.
Well, I don't think people felt comfortable. I mean, they were getting emails saying, you know, you didn't do your survey.
That's why I thought if you brought them back in, maybe they could explain to everybody, because, you know, you were all in on all those discussions and let you ask them questions. So you could ask them firsthand and perhaps ease your mind on it, you know, as to why.
But you're under the impression that paper ballots were not requested. by the teachers.
I'm saying that we brought it up in the meetings.
And we shared it with K-12, and she said it wasn't a good idea to do it.
Right.
Because you'd be handing out 375 paper copies, and then again, you're gonna have to key in all of that.
Well, they also expressed the concerns for, if you talk about validity, that, you know, there was no way to make sure there was no control over the paper copies. Okay, so you get a copy and you make 5 copies of it and turn 5 copies of it. There was no way to stop that. So.
I mean, do we really have people interested in, I don't know. I think we want to see results. This is something different. The request is made. I don't see why you don't just try it.
I think that you're right. I think if we do it again, if there's a paper medium way to do it, go ahead, do it. But I just don't think doing it on the back of just finishing one, you know, works for me. And that's all I'm saying. And maybe there's another company. There weren't that many.
I mean, I go to the car dealership and get a survey after it's filled out. I couldn't tell you the last time I've seen a paper survey.
Well, yeah, I was in the hospital last week, and I got surveys from the hospital. They want to know how happy I was.
You know, from the experience of my work, like the questions that they ask us would directly affect our boss, right? And that's really, I think, potentially what the issue might be is like you're throwing in your leadership team on some of the answers.
What answer? Oh, for.
No, as far as like the email, you're talking about a survey that's being ignored. It's like, so at my work, like the whole anonymity portion as far as why you want it is because to be able to speak freely,
right.
You can zero in on, you know, you ask for an example of, you know, when did you not feel comfortable talking to your boss, right? Those things, they can zero in on your specific example.
Right. But electronically, I mean, it doesn't come to the district, that's the point.
Yeah.
So I think you'd have to hear that from the company, how that works. I mean, the link goes to the individual, and then it goes directly to the company. So to me, the validity stand, that's more valid than.
Because we don't touch the responses. It goes directly to them. So.
Right.
If you have paper copies, like Corey said, that they told us that we would have to compile those. So then we are handling them.
And I could probably look at some of our last couple of surveys that Heather's maybe done out of her department for feedback and see what the percentages have been there. Just to give you an idea.
Well, this one was recommended through BOCES too, as I recall, right? This one. So
we use the other component of Let's Talk, so it's the where we get feedback from people and ask questions, and it's ongoing, non-stop customer service related process. But they have other tools as well. We use them for mascot survey too.
So the 40% represents everybody that took the survey. But
just
like,
staff.
That's just the staff.
It's just staff percentage.
That's not the overall.
No. Well, not according to the company.
I know, I said that.
Well, I just I'd like to know, if there's no issue, then we can move on. If there is an issue, I would benefit to address it. I think that one request was to try to do something with paper ballots because of perception, not necessarily, the perception is they don't feel comfortable answering if that's what the perception is. How can we help with that to get?
Well, maybe there's ways to, maybe there's a company that does a paper medium that knows how to safeguard so that there's no, fraudulent inputs or something. And I'm fine with that. If you want paper's fine. I just think that it's important that it goes to a separate handler, that the district is not handling the responses when they come in.
I think it's safe to say it's an assumption that your cautionary position as someone would make too many.
No, it was just that was what they brought up.
Right. A general downside, of the paper is they might overstuff ballots or whatever, however you want to say it. The other side is that they feel as though, I think, they can't be honest when answering the survey, my perception, my understanding, and that they would feel more comfortable with a paper ballot. I think that's the only reason why someone would do that.
So should we use paper ballot for everything, for all of our surveys?
No, but
Because we use everything as electronic, so I would be, I mean, if we're gonna do paper, then I think we do paper for everything, which I can, it's fine.
I think they have to be convinced that I think if you know technology, if someone gets an email saying you didn't complete the survey, people can interpret that as having email, and they may not understand the machinations of the technology, and that might be off-putting a little bit.
I'm not against the paper, Joe, not at all. I'm just saying, all I'm saying is how, as long as there's a mechanism to make sure everything's working the way it's supposed to, I don't care how they do it.
Well, I think what it boils down to is just a trust issue. I don't think we should be doing a whole nother survey.
Not right now.
But it all boils down to a
You might
trust
get
issue.
20% if you do it again
Maybe
now.
meet with the groups of the different respondents and talk to them about the results. And what are we gonna do with the results? We're not just gonna put them in a binder somewhere, are we? What was the purpose of doing it?
The committee was, was to look into the existing data, and then over time maybe find out how to have a better representation of, in terms of percent.
Yeah.
And,
I mean, I'd be curious to see if the different groups involved feel that this is adequate and reflects how they really feel.
Well, you might be surprised when you start digging into what we have, we talked about, all right, take the survey that we have and follow up on it.
Right.
And where does that go? And maybe that's where you get some of your clarification.
yeah, I mean, there's some really good stuff in there, and there's stuff that we want to improve, and I think.
Right.
Because I'll tell you this much, it was a hell of a lot of work. It really was. And if one of you wants to do it over again, have at it.
I think we're losing sight too, a little bit of the pieces that, from the survey about kids.
Yeah.
That were, there's a lot of good information, I think, there.
There was a lot of good information.
We can improve and address.
And we haven't even started to peel it back yet, to look at it, which is what I thought was the next step.
Yeah, so how does that begin?
Yeah.
That's kind of
I think that's the next discussion. Let's take what we have and see where it goes. That's my.
That's what we have, Linda and Nora agreed to have a committee to look into the data.
That works for me.
So, what's the direction from the board? Who's gonna be on the committee? I know Linda and I are. Corey, you're gonna invite parents and teachers, just keep it small. I don't understand what the direction's gonna be.
I think Linda will have some pretty good ideas, but she's not here tonight.
She wanted to go back to people and get their ideas.
Kind of her forte.
Were we involved in creating questions? You said it was a lot of work. I wasn't in on any of that. Like, how was the survey developed?
The survey was mostly the questions
They do all the questions.
Yeah. But anyway.
And they review the areas that they're gonna touch on, but all the questions they do. We really don't, other than just the timeline of getting the survey out, and whatever tools they give you to share out, we don't have any.
Most school districts are, even if they're not in New York State, the organizational structure is very similar. So again, they do this is what they do. So yeah, most of the questions were already there. We had to direct them where they were going. So.
Well, I'd like to think that each building for one of the goals would have something to do with the climate, specifically the climate. And I think one of our goals needs to be to increase the participation rate, whether that would be with the addition of paper ballots, but 40% is not acceptable to me. I think if we're deliberate and intentional, we provide time for our staff, the expectation is that they do it.
I'd be curious to ask other districts too. Do you guys do those?
It'd be interesting.
What percentage participation would be?
Yeah. And I think it is over time. And so I'd say it's a good start. And but we need to give people the opportunity to be honest. And if they thought a barrier was not being able to do paper ballots, then we need to give those people the opportunity. That's my thought.
What are you thinking, Mike, like the old IBM fill in the dots things? No, I just wondered because.
Well, I think it would be the exact same questions, just on a paper ballot. There's gotta be a way to print that out for the same question.
Because, I mean, I've heard people say as far as handwritten surveys, how do I know they're not gonna know my handwriting?
Just a Likert scale on a Scantron, I mean, that's all you really need. You could make a survey, ask 15 questions on a Scantron.
No, I just asking a question. I remember back in the IBM days, they had the circle of, they had the IBM with the opinion surveys, and it was, fill in the dot thing.
And I think part of it's like
the number 2 pencil.
Yeah, part of it's like the tax levy. If we did this, and you put it out there, and you afforded the opportunity to answer questions on paper ballot, that would be the one thing of maybe why some people didn't respond to the survey. That's the opportunity. If you had, then after that, we move on. But
so what we do the next one, we try to find somebody that does a paper survey. If that makes everybody happy.
Well,
honestly, I just think that, I think the other way is more anonymous, but I mean, again, it's more important that, the people taking it are comfortable, so. Whatever works. I'm just saying, I don't know how many companies are out there that are gonna be wanting to handle, a lot of paper.
But, I think we have administrators that are pretty sharp. They can probably handle it.
Well, yeah,
I think they could probably do a survey in their building with their employees if they, I'm pretty sure they could.
And that's fine with me if you're saying you're gonna trust our administrators to run the survey. Because that's not what I thought you were saying, okay? I thought you wanted somebody anonymous to handle the survey.
I don't think I ever said anything about the administrators.
Oh, no, that's what we tried from the beginning, was to put everything outside of the district's reach. So that, the district, we were trying to make sure there was no, or reduce any fear of people thinking that we were gonna be able to see what they did.
And that might be the part that was just missing. Single line.
Maybe next time, like I said, we orchestrate this with everybody, or,
Yeah, I think the only change I would have typed in is if I heard people saying they'd like to do something on paper, they feel more comfortable, I'd say, sure, we're doing that with the parents and the community members, why can we do it with them as well? It just seems logical to me that I wasn't in the room.
I thought it was, Joe, so if I'm wrong, then I'm wrong, but I agree with you.
That's it. Adjourn.